Rik Daems, President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Session week over. What for you were the highlights from your perspective?
Well, we had a very busy week, as you know, but the highlights, without any doubt, were the very high-level personalities that we had on board. We had Chancellor Merkel, who delivered an address and responding to questions. We had the President of the European Parliament, Mr. Sassoli, doing the same. We had the President, Madame Sandu, the President of Moldova, who was with us. We also had, obviously, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany. We had our own Secretary General. We had the Human Rights Commissioner. So, if you wish, what we try to do is to put the Council of Europe on the map, not because we like to be on the map, but because we need to promote human rights and fundamental freedoms throughout our member states. And the best way to do that is to have high-level personalities acknowledge that we are of relevance as to these issues. And so I think those are highlights. Of course, we had our own reports. Just to give you one example, we had a very big and important report on the strategic priorities for the Assembly, which was like a response to the Secretary General, who is making a plan for the coming 4 years. And as a matter of fact, we took advantage of that, and having Mr. Sassoli on board. So I send him that already, saying, listen, you're having this kind of a platform for citizens and what have you on the future of Europe. And we basically send a message saying, hey, Europe for us is the greater Europe. And so it's not only 27 of the Union, it is 47 member states in our case, and even more than that, because there are some countries that are not member states. So it gave us the opportunity to try to get on board in that exercise. And then obviously we had our classical urgent and current debates. One example on vaccine passports, where the position of the Assembly became very clear, saying this cannot be a tool to discriminate between people because they don't choose when they get vaccinated. And then we had obviously a debate on Armenia and Azerbaijan on potential prisoners of war. And the two big urgent debates were on two high-level cases of compliance to the court judgments, in this case in Russia and in Turkey. And that's with the, let's say, from the perspective of equal standards. And of course, these are two examples, but compliance to the judgment should be the case in all 47 member states. Now, these two cases or these two countries are a bit more high level at this time, and next time over, maybe there'll be other ones. Having said this, one of the things that was like all over the whole session was the withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention by Turkey. And one might reason, okay, they might have their reason to do so, but we are very sad about it, and we really don't, let's say, accept it to the extent that the message given by this to all women in our member states, and even further than that, is like, hey, you will be less protected. And that's worrisome. And as a matter of fact, in a strange way, it has put the Council of Europe and the value of our organization on the map, because even the President of the United States came on board and saying, hey, this is not good. And so we're trying to capitalize on that. And if you wish, my coming 2 months priority will be the protection of women and children against violence. So strangely enough, it gives an opportunity to now reach out, have those countries who signed up and didn't ratify it yet to do so, and even find other countries. Who knows that maybe, I mean, we've got countries requesting it, Kazakhstan, Tunisia, we've got countries interested, Mexico, Morocco. Who knows that, I mean, I made a pitch to the US saying, why don't you sign up? I mean, this is a big country. That would be really very important. So, wow, a very, very heavy to the substance loaded plenary session. And all of this, I mean, showing that it is possible that we function, because this is the second this year that we do in a physical manner, so people can come, given the fact that a number of colleagues cannot or are not allowed to come. Makes it a hybrid one, but we had over 100 members of parliament. If you take the staff in that, we went over 500 people. We had the testing facilities outside. We had all the sanitary conditions. Many thanks to the French authorities. And of course, what they want to do is they want to prove that Strasbourg is doable as a parliament. And yeah, obviously I told Sassoli, come on, man, come down to Strasbourg, I mean.
It's obviously been, as you say, a very busy session, but it comes at a time when there are a lot of difficult things going on. Nationalism seems to be on the rise. You've got both Turkey and Russia more or less saying they want to ignore the judgments of the Court of Human Rights. I mean, these are very strange times. How do you get people to listen to the assembly? Because the assembly lacks real power, real teeth, doesn't it?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I basically had to start with, they're not the only countries who are not complying with judgments of the court. I mean, my main message is always, I mean, equal standards, all equal to the law, so you all should comply. It is true that in a number of countries, amongst them Russia and Turkey, it's a lot more visible. But if you just take the list of compliance, I mean, there's a lot of other ones too. Now, I don't agree that we wouldn't have teeth. Because I reached out, I went to Moscow, I went to Ankara, a bit from the philosophy saying, I mean, it is all nice to talk about a country. Why don't you talk with the country and with its responsibles? And secondly, why don't we as space try to become part of the solution instead of staying part of the problem to the extent of only mentioning it? Yes, we politically have to voice out the issues in front of us. But my angle of approach is to try to go in the right direction. And we did so to a certain extent in Russia and Moscow. Not far enough by long. I do agree with that. And I'm very conscious of that. But at the end of the day, I mean, in Russia, they did invite us to observe the elections. Last time was 2012. And we did have some other elements on the table. Mr. Navalny wasn't free, to be quite honest. We hope it will be the case because they have to comply. And there we work with the Committee of Ministers. It's not, what I want to get rid of is this kind of an image that we're only like reaching out with the finger up and saying you're bad. No, we all want to be good. And let's try to work together to do so. Turkey is another example. I reached out to Ankara and had meetings with all these high-level people. And again, we did have a number of results, and it gave rise, I mean, it gave me the opportunity to reach into the issue of the withdrawal of the Istanbul Convention, which I think was not exactly the smartest move, neither politically speaking, but certainly not in terms of protection of women's rights. But then again, in Turkey, I'm not saying that, I mean, that we weighed in on it, but there was an important prisoner, Mr. Who was released, who was 4 years in prison, a journalist, by the way. One of your kind, right? Who was for 4 years in prison. And another was also really, I mean, we have to try to get that wheel back into motion. It is extremely difficult, but in both countries, at least the message was, we are on board in the Council of Europe. We don't like what you're doing, as so many other countries, UK, for example, they're not very happy with some of the judgments neither. But I'm not minimizing it because these are the high-level cases on the table. But making progress, which I learned two new words, by the way. In Russia, it's progress, and in Turkey, it's ilerleme. So, I mean, I'm even getting better at my languages, but we have to move out. We have to work together. I know that they always say you have to dialogue. My intake is different. I say, yeah, dialogue is one thing, cooperate is another thing, and making progress is a third thing. And so, although the steps seem very minor at this stage, but you know, it is a beginning. And I do believe that it is possible that pace has a role to play. By the way, when we make our recommendations, they do make a difference because the forces in these countries that are, let's say, on the side of compliance to the European Convention of Human Rights, obviously they take it on and they voice it out as we voice it out ourselves. So I don't want to be over optimistic, but you know, Karl Popper said optimism is a moral duty. So I'm just complying with my moral duty.
Are you hopeful that one day, looking at the standards that the Council of Europe tries to apply to everyone, are you hopeful one day most of Europe will be observing them visibly?
Yes, I do. And the reason why I say that is that just go back in time. Go back in time 10, 20, 30 years and make the comparison. European Convention exists for 70 years. Just go back in time, see how many countries came on board, see how many countries with the assistance and expertise of the Venice Commission, of all the other institutions and all the partial agreements. There is a lot of improvement, there's a lot of movement in the right direction. What you do have, where you do have a point, is that we see now some kind of a counter current coming in. I believe it is in part provoked by the COVID because everyone has to turn inside. They all have to protect themselves. It gives rise to strong measures. If you say strong measures, it goes a bit together with authoritarianism to a certain extent. Look at pandemic laws, look at the restrictions of freedoms in all of our countries, justly so. But you know, at the end of the day, sometimes they get abused of. And when I say sometimes, it's kind of an understatement. The example that we see is the Istanbul Convention, because now this becomes to a certain extent a political tool to have kind of a fight over political issues, right? And it comes a bit like traditional values as opposed to, but hey, Council of Europe's values are universal. They're not against family values because they're universal, but political forces abuse them, saying, oh, but this is the kind of way we want to live, and we don't want this kind of a progressive, what have you. Uh, I mean, society image or society form important. That's not the point. The Istanbul Convention is about protecting women. It is, I mean, it is addressing the issue itself at hand. And so, yeah, my priority now is to reach out for two reasons. One, I want to avoid that what happened basically is going to give rise to the idea that we are going to be less protecting women. We should be protecting women and children more because they are suffering a lot also because of the COVID and already before. So that's to the substance. To the political dimension, I want to make sure that no convention, and this is the example, the first, I hope only the only one, where the political forces, specifically extreme political forces, abuse of it and start debates around the convention as if it is a symbol of bad, right? We see that even in European Union countries, we see that. So my task is to say, hey, the convention is about protecting women and children. That is not a tool to be debating on what kind of a society would you like. I mean, just look at Poland, LGBTI free zones. That's like coming into the debate, right? It's just one example. And I don't want to single out Poland because there's other countries. And by the way, you would be surprised, so-called very decent countries also having some standards say, "Ula." So again, equal standards are important. But is there a decline? Certainly with COVID, let's say that some forces that are not inclined to comply with the universal values we all cherish are on the rise. So it is our task to go against it. And in a strange way, the withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention by Turkey has put us a lot more on the map than yesterday. So I'm taking it as a motivation of heading out together with all my colleagues, and it is very broadly carried here, to start working even harder on the issue itself, protecting women and children against violence, but also on the issue of having compliance to these very normal, common values, standards, fundamental freedoms, human rights. This is why we exist, and this is what we need to work on. And if you look at it that way, well, maybe, just maybe, we might have a window of opportunity because of all that, allowing us with more visibility to head out and to hit hard and to defend what we have to defend.
Rik Daems, President of the Parliamentary Assembly, thank you very much indeed.